Lizzy reads Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Big Shot by Kinney, published by Puffin Books. It turns out I'm going to have a chance to prove myself sooner than I thought. When we got back to school after summer vacation, there were posters in the hallways announcing field day. They have field day at my middle school every 4 years, and the last time they held it was when my brother Roderick was my age. I remember him getting excited about the competition because the winning homeroom got free ice cream at lunch. Well, this year they've raised the stakes. If your homeroom wins the competition, your class gets a day off from school, so that has everyone motivated to win. But the person who wants the day off the most is Mrs. Bosch, my homeroom teacher. She's pregnant and is always telling us how hard it is to be on her feet all day. Well, I could use a day off from school too. I don't want to let Mrs. Bosch or the rest of my team down, so I'm actually taking this competition pretty seriously. The thing is, I'm not in the best shape right now, so unless I do something about it, I won't be able to help us on the big day. I told Dad I wanted to get in shape, and he said I could start going to the gym with him. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but Dad's been going to the same gym for years, and whatever he's doing there doesn't really look like it's working. But I figured anything would be better than what I've been doing for exercise, which is nothing. So after dinner, I threw on some workout clothes and tagged along with Dad. The gym was packed, but I noticed there weren't any people my age there. Dad told me that technically kids aren't allowed at the gym, but if I didn't call attention to myself, I should be okay. There was all sorts of fancy equipment that I couldn't wait to try out, but Dad said it was best to start off slow, and he took me to the area of the gym where he likes to work out. When Dad showed me his exercise routine, I could understand why he hasn't been getting any results. After Dad did a few sit-ups and jumping jacks, he said he was going to go relax in the sauna for a while, and that meant I was free to exercise on my own. But the thing is, I didn't really know how to use any of the machines because they were all too complicated. So I had to try and figure things out for myself, and I'm still not 100% sure I was using the equipment the right way. What I really wanted to do was try out some of the things with screens on them, like the treadmills and the elliptical machines. But people were hogging that equipment and staying on longer than they were supposed to. And even when I gave them a gentle reminder that it was time to let somebody else have a turn, nobody seemed to take the hint. While I waited for one of the machines to open up, I passed the time by watching television, but the TVs were all tuned to some boring business show. So I found the remote and changed the channel to something a little more interesting. I guess everyone doesn't have the same taste in entertainment as me, because some lady got off the treadmill to change the channel, but as soon as she stepped off the machine, I jumped at my chance. There was a big screen in front of the treadmill, and you can choose between all of these famous places to take your walk. So I spent a few minutes trying to decide where I wanted to go. After I made my choice, the treadmill started moving, and I felt like I was actually walking along the Great Wall of China. But I guess the Great Wall is steep, and I was having trouble keeping up. So after a while, I put my feet on both sides of the conveyor belt and took in the sights the easy way. I realized I wasn't making the most of my time at the gym, and I started feeling a little guilty about it, but I didn't know what I should do next because I was running out of options. That's when I heard some weird noises coming from the other room, and I went to investigate. It turns out there was a whole different area of the gym, and it looked like this was where all the serious people hung out. I wanted to look like these guys, but I didn't know how to get started, and when I went around asking for advice, I found out that nobody was in the mood for chit-chat. After a while, I realized that the people in there weren't interested in helping a beginner like me, so I was on my own. And the first thing I had to decide was which muscles I wanted to start working on. I figured I should probably focus on my arms and my chest because those are the muscles that make you look like you're in shape. So I decided I'd start with a few bicep curls and go from there. But I didn't want to overdo it because at lunch yesterday, Albert Sandy told us about this bodybuilder who blew out a bicep, and I sure didn't want that happening to me. It turns out I didn't need to stress about it because I couldn't even get any of the dumbbells off the rack. I thought I might have better luck with the bench press, but I couldn't budge the barbell either, and I have to admit I was getting, a little frustrated. By now, people were staring at me, and I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing, so I started taking the weights off the barbell to make it a little lighter. But it turns out you're not supposed to take the weights off one side of the barbell all at once, because when you do, everything slides off the other side, and apparently people in the weight room don't like loud noises. So I guess that's the reason why they don't let kids in the gym. But it doesn't seem right that they kick Dad out too, because he has been a really loyal member. Mum said that when it comes to getting in shape, exercise is only half the picture. She said nutrition is just as important, and she'd be happy to teach me a few things about eating right if I really wanted to learn. I didn't feel like getting a lecture about food, but I jumped at the chance to go with her to the grocery store. And that's because I wanted to help pick out the food we have in the pantry. Whenever Manny goes to the store with Mum, he picks the things he wants. And that's why we have all this random stuff in our cabinet. No offense to Mum or anything, but she's terrible at picking out snacks. She always buys healthy stuff that tastes awful, and she won't buy any new snacks until we've eaten all the old ones. So lately I've been having my best friend Rolly over for tasting parties to help me clear space in the cabinets. When we got to the grocery store today, I split off from Mum, then loaded up the cart with a bunch of my favorites. Then I grabbed a few healthy items just to make Mum happy. But it turns out my idea of health food isn't the same as Mum's. When we met back up, she went over each item I picked out and explained why it wasn't good for me. But it turns out my idea of health food isn't the same as Mum's. When we met back up, she went over each item I picked out and explained why it wasn't good for me. She held up a bottle of fruit juice, which I thought was a pretty solid choice on my part. But Mum said it was full of sugar, and there wasn't any nutritional value to it. I told Mum she was wrong, because there was a picture of tons of different fruits right there on the bottle. Then Mum showed me the label, and I couldn't believe they could even get away with that. Mum said that if you really want to know what's in the food you buy, you have to read the list of ingredients. And she told me that the cans of Chef Marinara pasta I had in the cart were full of all sorts of chemicals. But I knew Mum was wrong about that, because I've seen the Chef Marinara ads on television that show him making his pasta by hand in old Italy. Mum showed me the small print on the back of the can, which said the food was made in a factory in Detroit. She said Chef Marinara probably wasn't even a real person, and that they just hired an actor for those TV ads. Well, that made me feel pretty stupid for dressing up as Chef Marinara in our wax figure exhibit at school last year. Then I started to wonder if Rotten Rudy was a real person, because those Rotten Rudy TV's ads scared me into drinking a gallon of milk every day. Mum said food companies are really clever about slipping their advertising into places you wouldn't expect, which made me think about the posters that are up in our hallways at school. She explained that sometimes packaged food companies use cartoon characters to get young kids to want their products. And I think she's right, because before we left the house today, Manny was watching an episode of The Merples, where Munchie Merple was chowing down on a bowl of rock candy crunch cereal. Mum told me that when she buys food for the family, she checks the labels and doesn't buy anything with ingredients she can't pronounce. Then she said the best thing to do is to buy food with only one ingredient, like fruits and vegetables. Well, I don't know if it's just my generation, but it's a little hard for a kid like me to eat something that isn't wrapped in cellophane or doesn't come in a cardboard box. But In fact, if chocolate bars grew in the ground, I bet I wouldn't touch them. But if the people who sell fruits and vegetables want to get kids eating that stuff, they're going to need to step up their advertising game. Field day is tomorrow, and things have really started to heat up at school. Mrs. Bosch has been making everyone in our homeroom get to class an hour early so we can have extra time to put together our strategy, and she's been getting paranoid about what the other classrooms are going to prepare. So today she sent Ladavian Mills up into the ceiling so he could spy on Mr. Drew's homeroom next door. But it turns out the ceiling tiles aren't strong enough to hold a person's weight. The homeroom Mrs. Bosch is most worried about is Mrs. Epstein's, because she's got a bunch of athletes in her class. And one of the kids is Jesse Range, who stayed back in 8th grade twice just so he could compete in field day one more time. But the team I'm most nervous about is Mr. Ray's class, because that's the morning detention homeroom. And on field day, I'm sure those guys are going to play dirty. To make matters worse, we found out we're going to be competing with grown-ups in this thing. The janitors went to the vice principal and said they wanted to put together their own team because they deserve a day off just as much as us students. I guess that's fair, but the bathrooms have been getting pretty gnarly ever since they started spending all their time training. And now the lunch ladies are getting in on the act, so the cafeteria has basically turned into a gymnasium. The homeroom teachers are getting pretty spooked, so they've started trading in kids to improve their team's chances. Mr. Esper sent the fastest girl in our school, Ava Hollis, to Mrs. Joy's class, and he got Thomas Sheff, who's apparently a specialist in the sponge toss. All this trading has got Mrs. Bosch thinking about making some moves of her own. She even gave me the job of scouting kids from some of the other homerooms to see who we should recruit for our team. That's why it stung when Mrs. Bosch traded me and 2 other kids for Jesse Range, then threw in a pack of dry erase markers to close the deal. Yesterday was field day at school, and it started off with some controversy. Mr. Ray gave Jesse Range detention just so he could steal Jesse for his team. So that meant Mr. Ray's team was totally stacked, and the rest of us didn't stand a chance. Before field day kicked off, Mrs. Epstein gathered our team on the playground to go over strategy and make some last-minute adjustments. But I still couldn't figure out why she wanted me and those other 2 kids instead of Jesse Range. I was only signed up for one event, which was the 3-legged race. My partner was Madison Bick, who's about a foot taller than me, which made things kind of awkward. But when the race started, I finally understood Mrs. Epstein's strategy. She didn't trade for me because I'm fast. She traded for me because I'm light. Me and Madison took first place, and our team was off to a good start. But we had a big setback a few minutes later when Marcela Romero rolled an ankle in the sack race. It turns out the lunch ladies had left some potatoes in a few of those sacks, and I'll bet that wasn't an accident. Marcela was supposed to run the 50-yard dash next, and all the other kids on our team were in the middle of events, so Mrs. Epstein told me I was going to have to fill in for him. I got second to last place because I was still kind of banged up from the 3-legged race, but I can't run really fast unless I'm motivated. The fastest I've ever run was when I got chased by Roderick after he stepped in dog poop and I laughed at him. I guarantee you, if someone had been timing me that day, I would have clocked in at cheetah speed. The only reason I didn't get last place in the 50-yard dash was because as soon as the race started, Jesse Range fell flat on his face. And when that happened, I figured he must have tripped over his shoelaces or something. But it turns out he got paid to take a dive, and no one would have found out if Vice Principal Roy hadn't caught him red-handed after the race, accepting his payment behind the school. Jesse didn't want to get suspended, so he gave up on the kids who were in on the betting scheme. And those guys had a whole gambling operation running out of the AV closet on the second floor. The rest of Mr. A's team was cheating too, but that didn't surprise anyone. Those kids had stored their water balloons in the cafeteria freezer, and the only reason they got caught is because George Ralston knocked Mikey Ardella out cold with a bad throw in the balloon toss. Mrs. Bosch's team won Beanbag Bingo, and that put them ahead in the standings for a while. But then Mr. Chow's team had back-to-back victories in the water bucket relay and the sponge toss, so then they took the lead. The janitors team started moving up in the rankings, and they probably would have taken the top spot if Mr. Washington's arms hadn't given out during the wheelbarrow race. The final event was the tug of war, and it came down to Mrs. Bosch's team versus the lunch ladies. I thought Mrs. Bosch's team was going to win for sure, but the lunch ladies outlasted them thanks to a solid job of anchoring by Mrs. Frawley. When we got back to our classrooms after the competition, we were all bummed that the cafeteria ladies were the ones to win the day off from school, and we were nervous because we heard the janitors were going to have to fill in for them during lunch. But I guess the school knew it was going to be an ugly scene, so right before the last bell rang, Vice Principal Roy made an announcement that everyone would be getting Friday off.